Welcome back.
It's been so long since the release of the first one, but Five Nights at Freddy's made a return to the big screen, and while I had to wait 3 weeks for the digital release, I'm more than excited to review it.
There's no way that'll work.
One year after the supernatural events at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the town has transformed the tragic history into a campy local legend, inspiring the first ever FazFest festival. When Abby sneaks out to reconnect with Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, her actions reignite long-buried horrors and uncover dark secrets about the true origins of Freddy's, unleashing a forgotten evil that has been hidden for decades. This was way better than the first by a landslide. As a Five Nights nerd, I started following the series after the release of the second game, and for a while it was one of my favorites. But as always, this is a spoiler review since I really can't help myself, so go see the movie. It's good. Like, really good. It's interesting how Scott was able to incorporate the first location into the story without it feeling convoluted, and I love how the world is fleshed out more just by the first few minutes. The opening with Charlotte is probably the best opening out of the two movies. Having the movie immediately open with William going welcome back won me over almost instantly. I like that there's a bit more of William in the spring Bonnie suit. Don't know if Lillard was in the suit, but the way he stalks around corners is haunting and generally looks creepy. I also gotta commend Audrey Lynn Marie for giving a really good performance as Charlotte. She's easily one of the best kid actors in the movie that really sells her anger over the negligent parents, and it plays into her motive really well. But man, the final shot where Marionette is holding her corpse is such a terrifying hook that leads almost smoothly into the opening credits. I say almost because it cuts to black weirdly before the theme plays. The Niven brothers go hard in general, but their score really does add a lot of style to the movie. The revamped score for the opening is genuinely incredible, and I love that it's a motif throughout the movie. I also love that the Toreador marches feature prominently after being missing from the first one. It really makes this film feel more like a Five Nights movie. The story follows the familiar sequel structure, and sadly, I think they could have done more. This time around, we got the man himself, Scott Conklin, as the sole writer, and it's probably one of the weakest aspects of the film. Now look, I respect Scott as a game designer, and to his credit, there's sparks of greatness within the movie, mostly during the fan service, animatronic sequences, and some of the jokes. But man, I think the way he went about writing the story is really odd, and the way the main trio is handled is strange. Josh Hutcherson and Elizabeth Lale especially do great as Mike and Vanessa, but it's odd how uneven their relationship is. Mike and Vanessa's arc is interesting to watch, but Mike is kind of a dick to her in some scenes. He has a point in terms of Vanessa lying, but it feels a bit too sudden to just have Mike hate her only to work with her in their next scene. Mike in the first movie was also a dick, but I think he had a solid arc of slowly changing for the better, and in some spots of this installment we see that change. But at the same time, Mike doesn't necessarily have an arc. He's kind of just there and he just feels like a side piece rather than the main character. Vanessa, on the other hand, gets some really interesting character development, but is severely undermined in terms of how her screen time is utilized. It feels like Vanessa was supposed to be the main protagonist in this sequel, but for whatever reason, Mike and Abby are shoved in, and as a result, it makes not just her, but Abby and Michael as well feel underutilized. Abby's side plot is kind of uninteresting since they focus so heavily on a science fair, and Piper Rubio easily has the weakest material out of the three outside of one scene in the third act, but I gotta say, Megan Fox shot me as Toy Chica and easily gives the best vocal performance in the film. For positives, I absolutely love how Henry, William, and Michael are utilized. Skeet Ulrich, despite being in the movie for 5 minutes, gives it his all as Henry. It's a small scene but adds so much depth to the world and puts into perspective how much tragedy and grief William has caused to people, and the scene gives us one of the best written lines in either films.
It's so easy to become so blinded by ambition that even with the best of intentions you don't see the devil sitting right beside you.
Matthew Lillard gives another stellar performance as William, and it's only built my excitement for his more leading role in Part 3. The whole dream with Vanessa was really well executed, and I absolutely love the Circus Baby cameo, who translates really well to live action. And I like Freddie Carter as Michael. He's a welcoming addition to the cast, and I love how from his first appearance he's the most obvious bad guy to ever bad guy with his constant eyebrow raise, an evil half-turn. And there's a lot more sequences with the animatronics in action. They're all fantastic to watch. The Spectral Scooper sequence is genuinely fantastic, and it was the first of 3 times this movie made me jump. I did notice that it essentially felt like a second opening scene. Either reshoots prevented that from happening or whenever they were editing the movie, but it doesn't take away from how borderline terrifying it is. The movie in general, despite some kooky jokes here and there, is scarier than the first film. Not scariest movie of all time material, but it translates some of the fear and creepy ambience the second game had very well, and not even kidding, it had my heart thumping in a few spots. The marionette is probably the best looking animatronic in the movie. It's surprising how they use very little CG, and I like how she's a persistent antagonist throughout the film. I also like Charlotte's motive a lot. It not only makes sense, but it also falters when she doesn't really give a good explanation as to why she's targeting Abby. One of the many instances that made me realize Mike and Abby wasn't supposed to be a part of the movie in the first or second drafts. But I do love how they incorporate the second game's mechanics into the second act. It's not just good fan service, but it's tense to watch even though the constant small comments by Mike get a tad much. Mike talks a lot in this movie, maybe even more than the first, and while I love Josh Hutcherson, a lot of his quips don't really work.
How is there not a door? There's no way that'll work. That worked. Oh no. Come on. This time or never.
You shut the fuck up! 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 I hope you die in a fire!
I love the scenes with him and Abby, but man, his dialogue makes him sound less smart and more jokey and sometimes even corny. The kills are surprisingly brutal. One even pushes the line at PG-13, and while not the focus, each kill is crafted well. I really like Mr. Bird's death a lot. It's the first real tease of these movies teetering the edge of PG-13, and I like that it doesn't just cut away from his head getting squished. We see it squished just a small bit before it cuts to a blood splat shot. It's gnarly. I also like the addition of having Marionette possess people. Some people think it's a cheesy horror cliche, but it actually makes sense within the story, and I love how creepy the possessed Lisa and Abby look. Don't really like how obvious it is that they're on wires, but everything else about the design is on point. The third act is probably my favorite set piece since it really brings pieces of Vanessa's story together in a good way. Michael's monologue is pretty good, but I think his plan harps on Fast Fest a bit much. Fast Fest is mentioned throughout this movie, to the point where when we finally get a glimpse at what it is, it's for a cheesy joke that works but feels disappointing. We see more of the science fair than we do a place that could have been a gold mine for references and even a couple kills. I like that Michael reveals Vanessa as his sister. Their little spat back and forth was good, but I wish we got more of their relationship. It would have been neat to see the full family dynamic with the Aptons when Vanessa and Michael were kids, because even in the movies, the family as a whole feels like such an overlooked part of the story. I do absolutely love how dumb this third act gets though. They legitimately pull a We Are Finest Phrase moment where all the original animatronics just come in and dismantle the toys. It's not only ridiculously dumb, but it had me smirking like a kid again. It's so goofy, but felt so right. I also like how they did the freeing of the souls. It makes sense and not too cheesy, while at the same time there's a little bit of cheddar. But the ending kinda confuses me since Mike kinda just ditches Vanessa directly after she sides with him and Abby. It feels forced too, since before they were literally working together to stop the toy animatronics from killing people, and they succeeded. Why make them succeed if Mike is just going to ditch her? And I feel like Michael being the reason shouldn't have been the breaking point. I think it would have worked a lot better if everyone they were trying to save actually died. It not only adds to Mike's distrust towards Vanessa, but it could have led perfectly into Michael's big reveal and it would have felt impactful. God, I am just now realizing how fucking awful it is that Mike and Michael are two very different characters, but they're technically the same person in the games. As it stands, it felt out of character, but I love that it leaves on a downer, albeit sudden note. Vanessa getting possessed by Charlotte is interesting, and it makes me wonder what exactly is planned for the third and probably final entry. I will say I do think while I love the Five Nights song by Living Tombstone in the first movie, It's Been So Long feels so out of place given how the movie ends. I personally think Painted Faces would have fit a lot better considering Marionette is pretty much the main antagonist, but I get it, you gotta do the meme. I also really dug the mid-credits, and was not really expecting to see a Fazbear's Fright tease, along with a brief look at Springtrap, who again looks really good in live action. These animatronics, in general, look fucking terrific. I feel like if they really wanted to do the third entry justice, it has to up the kills and at the very least give us a lot more insight as to what the Aptons were like as a family. Make Vanessa the protagonist, reduce Mike and Abby's roles, and have William and Michael be the main antagonists, not hyper-focused on the Phantom animatronics or whatever else is in the third game. You can keep the cheesiness, but if it's just going to be set piece after set piece with no real central focus, you're going to lose not just the target audience, but the general audience as well. But overall, while not perfect, I had a damn good time with Five Nights 2. When it lacks in story, it absolutely delivers on more animatronic sequences, and it has a lot of good nods to both the memes and actual games while not being afraid to poke fun at how silly it is. There's a couple times where it doesn't work, but all of it is good fun, and unlike some video game movies, it doesn't feel ashamed of being a Five Nights movie. After some lengthy debating, I'm going to give Five Nights 2 a solid 8.5 out of 10.